what you learn in surf, you get reinforced in yoga and reinforced in wellness. And so eventually, like muscle memory, you begin to take those things out of the water, out of your wellness coaching session, off the yoga mat, and into your daily life.
Someone cares about you.
There's a reason why your heart is beating.
You still have a purpose.
Don't give up.
It's important to know that you're not alone.
You're not alone.
You're not alone.
You are not alone.
The word therapy can have different implications to different people. It can conjure up images of sitting in a psych office, talking to a doctor or a group of people going through something similar, or it can bring up images of walking out in nature, reflecting on the beauty around. But for a certain group of people, it's time spent on a board, paddling out into the ocean, waiting to catch the next wave. And I'm excited to talk to this show's guest, Navy veteran and the executive director of Warrior Surf Foundation, Stephanie Dasher. Stephanie is here to share her journey and how her and her family discovered the healing power of the ocean through surfing. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining me on the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast.
Thanks so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, as our listeners remember to start their Strava app and track their walk, I'd really love to learn, first, what led you to joining the Navy?
It's actually kind of a cheesy story. I was coming up to the end of my high school career. I knew I wanted to go to college. My parents weren't filling out the FAFSA paperwork fast enough for my liking. So I was like, let me see what else I can do. And I took the ABSAB. I actually initially was like, I'll just become a pilot. And with all like the ego that an 18-year-old can have, I Googled 5 things about flight aptitude and took the flight aptitude test. I think I missed it by just like 1 or 2 questions, something like that. And the warrant officer that was in there was like, you think you can just come in here and become a pilot? And I was like, well, not with that attitude. So instead of studying and retaking the test, I just walked out. And then the new recruiters came and found me, and they were like, hey, we'll give you a lot of money if you sign up to do this, and you'll get to go to college. And I was like, okay, done. And that's kind of how I ended up in the Navy.
Oh my gosh. What did you end up doing while you were in the Navy anyways, if not a pilot?
Yeah, so it's nuclear power. So I was actually an electronics technician.
Oh, right on. So you definitely did really, really well on your ASVAB to the point where they got you in one of the more difficult schools going forward. Were there any key moments while you were a sailor that kind of like helped shape what your future began to look like?
I think that the nuke program is an interesting program. There's not a lot of women in it. It's definitely different from the regular Navy. And I would say, actually, when I went to shore duty for a little bit and worked at Navy Region Northwest, and I kind of got a feel for what the regular Navy was like, it really shaped some of my views and some of my experiences. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. And I was able to work alongside civilians and had a lot of really cool opportunities to put some of my technical skills to work. It was sort of a key transition for me to see how these tools could be applied to life outside the military.
That's really awesome. So what eventually led you to deciding to get out of the Navy? Was it being equipped like that, or were there other driving factors?
Yeah, so my husband was in the Army, and he was 11 Bravo. He deployed overseas. So when he got back, he had a lot of stuff going on. And we ended up getting pregnant with my daughter, which is kind of a surprise to both of us. And so it was that was probably the biggest decision was, okay, we've got a kid now. What do we do next? So I decided that I would separate.
And how do you feel like that transition really worked for you? I know that you said you had some good tools going on, but being a new mother, and transitioning out of the military, like those are 2 really big life events to have occurred. How do you think you kind of prepared for that, and did the military help you out with any of that?
I actually really appreciated the command that I had over at Navy Region Northwest. They were so great, really understanding. I think being a new mother, there's nothing that prepares you for that. I don't think the military can prepare you for it. I don't think being around a bunch of little kids can prepare you for it, or having a big family that you grew up in. That's just a feast of its own. But I do think that the support that I had there made my transition a lot easier. It also gave me the confidence to pursue things that I might not have had the confidence to pursue. I think that's one great thing about the military in general is when something needs to get done, oftentimes it just lands on someone's plate and you figure it out. And so you build up that schema and that self efficacy, and you're like, oh, wait a minute. I'm actually able to figure stuff out that I don't really have a lot of experience in. I can just do some research and I can look into it and I'll figure out how to do it.
Absolutely. When you were figuring all this stuff out, what was available to you? I know that for veterans as well as active duty, especially being a spouse of an active duty person, you do have a lot of benefits that are available to you. Just are you able to pass anything along right now to anybody that might be kind of in a similar boat, dual military and thinking about that transition? Any words of wisdom or how they should go about preparing for their transition?
Yeah, I think the Navy had quite a few resources. Obviously, I was finishing up my degree while I was on active duty, so that was one thing straight out of the gate that was really beneficial. I don't know that I leaned into a lot of those additional programs or if I felt like I necessarily had the need, but I think job placements, getting preference on, USA jobs if you're a spouse, those are all tools that can be used for veterans whose spouse are 100% permanently totally disabled. There's career counseling things that are available. There's the dependent education assistance program. So there are a lot of tools out there that can be accessed and utilized to help you achieve your goals.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, like some of those resources, are really not difficult to come across, but because a lot of people aren't necessarily sharing the knowledge while we're in active duty, uh, a lot of it's kind of like self-discovery. We know a lot of veterans and a lot of spouses that are discovering just how many resources that there are as they're reconnecting with the veteran community. Because a lot of military members, when we get out, we kind of distance ourselves. Like we either embrace it or we get completely away from it. And as people struggle to connect either with their families, their friends, their communities after they leave the service, all of these resources just we feel like they either don't exist, they're not for us, or they're not actually going to do anything good for us because we hear bad things talked about them, right?
Yeah, I do feel like veterans sometimes shy away from other veterans. I know my husband especially did when he first separated. It was really hard for him. But I think that the really cool thing about veterans is that when one is in the know, everyone else they know will be in the know as well. And I think it's like that during service, and that's something that like when somebody figures out something that's going to benefit them, there's not a lot of gatekeeping happening. They like want to tell everyone else about it.
Oh, that's so true, and such a good thing when we start talking about what's actually available. And for yourself, I was watching a TED talk where you were talking about entitled "The Ocean is Medicine," and you shared a bit of your husband's story there and your family's journey post his transition. He was one of those veterans experiencing the disconnect from the community, shying away from other veterans. And a lot of combat veterans, we kind of do the same thing because we don't know how other people are going to react to us. I don't know how I'm going to react around a lot of new people, or at least I didn't for years until I started interacting with other people. Um, how did you guys go about for yourself and then for him go about building connections within the community?
Yeah, I think at the beginning it's challenging, right? You're asking a person who has this lens based on their experiences to step out of their comfort zone. And to be fair, when experience has told you something and you've been proven right a few times, it's really difficult to rebuild neural pathways and want to step out there and try again to get a different result. And so, I think that a little bit of forced company worked in his case. I think I drew kind of a line in the sand. I was like, we're gonna do this. And at first he really didn't want to. And over time and maybe a little bit of convincing from me, he began to realize that not everyone was out to get him. Not everyone was vetting him, which I think that's such a strange thing. I feel like veterans get in their mind that's happening. If someone's vetting me, they don't think that I've done enough or my service isn't enough or I have to prove something about myself. And I actually think that's something we put in our own heads. And that's a self-imposed sort of narrative because I don't actually see that happening very often in reality.
Yeah, I think that there's a much smaller group than we realize that require us to self-qualify as a veteran that needs support. And it was such a short-lived thing. I have a fellow combat veteran that he has a great online community. And he kind of addressed it doesn't matter where you served, when you served, like you're a veteran, and work towards connecting with the community and getting the benefits that you deserve because nobody deserves to suffer, especially if you decided to sign up. So and the conversations that go around that are so interesting, right? Because once you start interacting with these support groups, with these nonprofits and these other organizations, veteran service organizations that are around, you feel all that positivity. But when you're on the outside, you feel like you don't really qualify to be a part of that group because of those conversations. And so how did you finally start getting your husband, the combat veteran from the Army, to start coming out and being a part of these groups?
Yeah, so initially when we first heard about Warrior Surf, he heard about it from a therapist at the VA. She's like, hey, have you heard about this? And he came home and told me about it. And I was like, that sounds cool. I love the ocean. Let's do it. And he was like, nope. And I was like, cool, I'm signing this up. So I signed us up, and in my TED talk, I say like, "Oh, we almost got divorced on the way there," and that's not necessarily untrue. There's a lot of stress going into it because I was like, "We got to do something," and I really kind of was forcing the hand a little bit, but purely from a place of love. And when he got there, the only thing that was keeping him there was that surfing was difficult. He's an athlete, and he wasn't immediately good at it. And so he was like, I had this sense of like wanting to master something. And as that happened, and he kept spending more and more time with people, the inevitable happened, and he began to make relationships because that exposure, a little bit at a time over a long period of time, began to teach him like, okay, wait, this is actually a lot safer than I thought it was.
For yourself, when I want to go back to where you said like you almost got divorced on the way, in a very jokey kind of way, but that's a very real thing that a lot of people go through, right? Like we don't know how much to push our partner or our loved one or our friend into getting the help, right? There's always this, am I supportive by being patient? Am I supportive by making them go through something? Where'd you find your line in your relationship, and how did you guys go about communicating that to one another?
That's really no one's ever asked me that question, and it's really difficult to say. And I can't speak from anyone else's shoes. I know that it's hard on both sides, right? It's hard for the spouse or the caregiver that maybe just wants the person that they had before back, or is tired from dealing with some of these things. And then on the flip side, you've got this veteran who's had this experience that's changed them deeply, right? Enough to rewire their brains. And they don't want that. They don't want to feel the way they do. And it's painful for them to feel like they're making anyone else suffer. So now not only do they have some of these anxieties and stressors from their experience, but they feel guilt and shame because they can't serve the people they love the way they want to. And I wish that there was some magic answer of how much you press and how much you are patient and supportive. I don't think that I could tell anyone the answer to that. I wouldn't want the burden of saying that, but I will say I think But I know that my husband appreciated it. And I think that many of the veterans I work with and talk to are so grateful for the people in their lives who are patient with them and try to show up for them and stand in the gap when they need it.
That's really awesome. Thanks for just exploring that. I'm really grateful that you guys got to where you were at because it led you to becoming a big part of the Warrior Surf Foundation, so much so that you became the executive director. Obviously, you found the transformation. Would you mind sharing a little bit about like what that transformation was like for you and your family, and then how the foundation itself operates?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was hugely transformational for us. I would just like to add to my previous point, too. The more you can be open in your communication and vulnerable in your communication, as uncomfortable as it can be sometimes, I think the more powerful the change can be and the more open to change both of you can be. It can be so easy to get stuck in our loops. So when one or both people are trying to change and then you get drawn back into that loop, just having awareness of what's going on and being open about the communication is powerful. But as far as transforming my family, it was undeniable. There came a time where it was hard for me to leave my husband home alone because I was afraid of what I would come back to. So I'd leave a kid with him because I was like, well, I've got some responsibility. And that was scary, but it also, I think I didn't realize until many years later how dysregulated it made my nervous system. I was just in it and I was like, okay, we got to do what we need to do to get to the next step. Um, and so as, my husband unwound and really became connected to his authentic self, it also helped me get to that same place, to unwind, to feel safe, to have a sense of ease. And that really translated into our relationship with our children and their relationship with each other. There's something really magical when everyone's nervous system's at ease, how a family unit can interact, what that communication looks like. And we don't realize how potent stress hormones are on our bodies. And so now we see my kids are out there surfing. We went out this past Saturday, and my 7-year-old, who was a baby when we started, he'll actually be 8 next month, grabbed a little surfboard, no shirt, just shorts. Everyone else is in wetsuit and paddled himself right out to the lineup. And he was just ready to go. And I was like, when I brought this kid here, he was an infant. And now he's out here and we're doing this experience as a family. And what a wonderful way to bond without any fear.
That's really, really awesome. As we're sitting here talking about, the Warrior Surf Foundation, I know that it's not just surfing and it's not just community. Like you guys, you and your team do so much for the veterans that you serve and their families. Would you mind sharing a little bit about what the program entails and what it is?
Yeah, so it's free. It's 12 weeks long. And we invite veterans to participate again with their families. We'd love to get the family unit working together. I think that that's a very sustainable way for healing to occur. So when you join our program, we start a new group the first Saturday of every month through August. And it's about 15 to 20 people in each cohort. In order to graduate from our program, you have to do 10 semi-private surf sessions, 8 wellness coaching sessions, which I like to call secret therapy. We use positive psychology, mindfulness, and evolutionary psychology to help people gain skills to overcome some of those thought patterns and the issues that they're dealing with, whether it's transition issues or post-traumatic stress or depression or anxiety. And then they have to do a yoga one-on-one and 3 group yoga sessions. And each piece of the program is meant to mirror the next. So what you learn in surf, you get reinforced in yoga and reinforced in wellness. And so eventually, like muscle memory, you begin to take those things out of the water, out of your wellness coaching session, off the yoga mat, and into your daily life.
That's awesome. As not just as the executive director, but as a surfing family. how does this program, like the wellness, the yoga, the being out on the water, how do you feel like that provides healing and connectivity? Like, what do you think it is about it?
I think it's a couple of different things. I keep seeing these memes about type 2 fun, which we know a lot about in the military, right? It's this fun that's not really that fun, but it's like it's the stress and the struggle of it that like makes it memorable. And we know from science that doing hard things is actually really good for our brains. And so you have veterans and their families who are coming out here and trying something really hard. You know, surfing is not easy. It's not that it's impossible for people to do. It's just not like getting up and walking down the street and they fail and they fall over, they get knocked down, and they're encouraged to get up and do that again and again with people who really genuinely care about them and want to see them succeed. And that builds mastery. And mastery is so important for our sense of self. And when we have a sense of self, when we have a purpose and a direction in our life, we're really aligned to our authentic being, and all the other pieces of the puzzle begin to fall in line. And each piece is like that. So same with wellness. Like you fall off your board and you get pissed about it. We're gonna unpack that in wellness. And then we're gonna maybe figure out how to relate that to the rest of your life. Like, all right, well, the printer didn't work. Why'd you smash it? What's really going on here? Let's get 4 or 5 layers deep. And that frustration that you learn to overcome in surfing eventually kind of peels off and starts flowing into the rest of your life. Like, okay, well, I was able to get smacked in the head by the lip of a wave. That didn't go the way I wanted to, but I tried again and I did a little bit better.
Now, with Leanne and I living out in Hawaii, surfing is a huge part of the island culture, but I've never been successful at it. The most I've been able to do is hop on a relatively long board and catch like 1 or 2 waves in an easy shore break. Right. My other exposure to it has been watching movies like Forgetting Sarah Marshall and just hearing Paul Rudd go, "Pop up, no, faster, pop up." No, too slow. Or watching Blue Crush and watching people get wrecked, like, how do you feel like some of the people interested in surfing should prepare themselves for a program like yours?
We get people of all ages, all shapes and sizes. I think our oldest veteran is 74 years old, all abilities. So a lot of times people come to us, maybe they fib a little bit on their intake form about how much they weigh or what their athletic ability is. We get that. I think what happens is our instructors are so patient and so good that we have a lot of different techniques depending on people's ability levels to be able to get them to pop up. And that first time you stand up on a board, something really magical happens in your brain because it's a lot like flying and you get hooked. And so maybe you weren't in the best shape when you got here, but over time with yoga and our serious focus on wellness, which includes like, hey, what are you eating? What other exercise are you getting in your life? People tend to start getting in better and better shape because they've become a little bit of a healthy addiction to this experience with surfing. They want to be able to do it better.
That's really cool that you focus on all those different aspects of life, because like, there's so many programs out there and there's so much that is available for people that is pretty like one directional. We are trying to migrate within the military and veteran community to a whole health model where we focus on all aspects of life. And it seems like that's a lot of what you and your team are doing. And so if people are interested in your program, how can they get involved with the Warrior Surf Foundation?
Yeah, so it's really simple. If they want to get involved, they want to register for the program, they can just head over to our website, which is warriorsurf.org, and they can hit the veteran application tab. They submit an application. Our wellness director reaches out to people directly to get them put in the right cohort for the year. So pretty simple. And same thing for volunteering. Just head right over to the website. People can do that as well.
Now, you guys have a lot of your veteran participants have gone on to become volunteers and serve instructors. Is that right?
Yes, we love that.
Yeah, and that's so amazing because, for some of these programs, if there isn't that follow-up care, the struggles that people had before getting involved with a program like this carry on after they're done with it. The endorphin rush that came along with experiencing something new has faded away within a few weeks of returning back to their environment. And so by giving them something to look forward to, I'm sure is of great help to them. And then they also get to serve and impact others, which is incredible because, as we know, not just from being in the veteran community, but from serving others, we know that there are ongoing struggles within our community that lead to high suicide rates amongst our service members, veterans, and first responders. If you had a message of hope for a caregiver or a veteran that is currently battling with these thoughts, what would that message of hope be?
I would say don't give up. I know that the pain of wanting to give up is so big. It's so big that it overshadows any of the shame or guilt associated with giving up. You'd rather give up and live the way you're living right now. And there's something on the other side of that darkness. It exists. People care so deeply about you, and want you here, want to see you succeed, want to be a part of your life. I've been there, obviously, and I know that it can feel like it's never ending, but that's simply not the truth. So please just reach out to anyone and keep pressing in.
Well, Stephanie, we truly appreciate you for taking the time to join us here on the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast and share about the Warrior Surf Foundation.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate having me on.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, please remember you can catch the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast on Reese Across America Radio, ready for you on platforms like iHeartRadio, Odyssey, and the TuneIn app.